Hello, everyone, and welcome to Breakthroughs with Bree. On this podcast, we are discussing all of the topics that help us have breakthroughs on our personal and spiritual development journeys. My name is Bree, otherwise known as Healing with Bree, and I'm a channeler, energy healer, tarot reader, astrologer, and soul alignment coach. My mission in my work and in this podcast is to help teach people how to shift their consciousness, how to heal, and how to release beliefs and patterns and fears of their ego mind so that they can step into alignment with their soul to live lives of abundance, purpose, and bliss. In these episodes, I will be sharing either through my own lens and my own channel or through the experiences of my guest, wisdom and expertise about healing, spirituality, psychology, personal growth, holistic wellness, mysticism, consciousness, and so much more. My hope is that these conversations help you feel seen and provide support and inspiration for you with your own personal breakthroughs. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to welcome this guest today and to have what I'm sure is going to be the most magical conversation with her. Today, we have on a psychic medium, a shamanic medicine woman, a high priestess of earth-based magic whose sole mission is to aid in the raising of human consciousness and enjoyment of the human experience for all. I am so happy to welcome today Savannah the Blissful Bohemian. Welcome
Hi,
to the
thank you for having
podcast.
me.
We had a really fabulous time chatting before we started recording. So I've already got to hear a little bit about her and some of her fun profiles that we like to chat about right at the top of the episode. But we will start there to give the listeners the opportunity to hear about those too. So we'll kind of do a rapid fire version of it. I'll have you start by sharing with us your pronouns and where you're located in the world.
She, her, and I'm outside of Detroit, Michigan.
Nice. And then the fun stuff that we all love to hear about. We can start maybe with like human design, your big three in astrology. Tell us a little bit about you with those.
Yes, I'm a 5-1 sacral generator. I have a Virgo sun, Pisces moon, Aries rising. My life path number is 6.
Mm.
And in the Myers-Briggs, I'm an INFJ. And in Enneagram, I'm a 4. I'm not sure wing 3 or wing 5, but I'm a 4.
Love it. Yeah, I don't know if I told you this, but my husband's also a 5-1 and my best friend is a 5-1. So I am like around 5-1s in human design all over the place, but I think both of them are manifesting generators. And then, of course, we also had a good little chat about how we're both Virgo suns and Pisces moons, which I think is a really fun experience. I don't know if this is something that you resonate with too, but I think it's really powerful to have a moon that is so spiritual and intuitive and a sun sign that is so adept at making things practical and making things grounded and really like finding magic in like the mundane and finding the balance between those two, I think is like a very powerful and fun thing. While of course can be challenging, can also be fun too.
Yeah, that's sort of what we're going to get into, I think, today. I love to look at all the different topics that I study and teach through both that spiritual and scientific lens. I think truly to have a full scope of what you're looking at, you need both,
Yeah.
and that they marry together and belong together very well.
Absolutely. That was one of the things that first drew me to your content, which I got to tell her about a little bit before we started recording. Um, but before we get into that topic, which I'm so excited to dive into, I would love for you to share with the listeners a little bit about your story, about how you came into the work that you're doing. I think that like our sort of path coming into where we're at is such a fascinating thing to observe and to get to hear about with other people. So please share with us whatever you feel moved to.
Yeah, okay. So I do have indigenous roots, and I am Caribbean indigenous, like registered on my mom's side. But that was not super prevalent in my childhood. I actually, if you can see it, I was born with a broken heart. And so before the age of 8, I've had 11 heart surgeries, one of them being an open heart. And at about 3.5, I died, like medically. And so I don't have any memory really before that, but it is my first memory going to the other side and coming back. So that was sort of like
Whoa.
the preface of my life. So, but the thing is, like, everybody, especially growing up, thinks everyone is like themselves, right? So I never knew how or why I was different. I just kind of knew that evidently that I did not fit in with people, that I was very much a social reject. It's a very old story of mine, of course, but that was what was going on, and I didn't know why. What I wanted to talk about with you today is very tied into my own self-discovery and then self-mastery, where yes, I'm neurodivergent as hell. I'm spicy spice. But that is synonymous with my intuitive gifting. The things that made me the outcast, it's also my gift. So yeah, I grew up as an ADHD, autistic or ADHD. I only officially have a diagnosis for the autism, but I definitely have the ADHD as well. Grew up neurospicy, but also was an awakened medium since I can remember. But like I said, we don't know that people are different than us until we do, right? So there was this long time until probably like 17 years of age where I was different evidently, but I didn't understand or know why or how. And that is something that is so fundamental to my mission and why I do what I do. I specialize in empaths, awakening empaths, sensitive individuals who usually tend to be neurospicy. And that is an old story of mine now, though, that because there's more of us. I can't be an outcast if there are more of us. It's just we don't know. Once we figure out that we're different, we think, oh, we must be a singular off case, but we're not. There's so many of us. And that's like another big part of my mission is helping people like us to come together and to learn about why we are the way we are and shift that curse into the gift and blessing that it is, and to I'm getting lots of chills here. I believe that neurodivergent people in tribal times were the medicine people, and our world is very sick, right? When we first learn about how we're different and that gifting, I know I'm getting away from my story here, but when we first learn about how we're different and that gifting, we might first encounter the word empath. And that's why I say, like, I'm an empath mentor, I'm an empath guide, because that's where they're first calling themselves when they figure out, okay, this is how I'm different. And it might also be I'm neurospicy and an empath, right? Those are usually the first two things, spiritual, scientific, right? That's why I use those terminologies, because that's why I want to find people. I want to find them when they're just figured out, they find the first steps of their path. So we can get totally other topic about my mission and like what I'm doing with Ancient Soul Gardens for the past 5 years now, full time. But yeah, I believe that the medicine people who have been cast out of society and their roles have been fractured into, like, and no hate to these fields, obviously, but like doctor, therapist, nutritionist, psychic, right? This used to be all one role, used to sit or be alongside the chief, the head, right? And now we're quacks. And so a big part of my mission is to carve back our space in society. With that, reconnect people with the earth, with plants, with their own intuition, empowering them to find their own answers, their own spiritual and intuitive knowledge, So I bring up all of like more mission type stuff because it's tied into how I grew up and what I grew up very much in the church, fundamental Christianity. I think you as well.
Mhm.
Just dogma up the ass.
Yes. Shoved
No nuance.
down my throat. Sometimes felt literally, but you know.
Yeah, heavily, heavily, heavily. And we can talk about purity culture. We can talk about the literal interpretation of an ancient text translated through 3 languages and taken out of societal context. Like we can talk about that, but that's what I grew up in. And I think my parents put me there because they thought it was good for me. Although they did not start their lives in that religion. And so even, being in society, being hypersensitive, empathic, a medium, autistic, ADHD, like neurospicy, you're already kind of like, I don't have a guide for this. I don't know. I feel like everyone got a manual and I didn't. Being then in the church, like the divorce that gave me in my spirit. And you're not even aware of those things at the time because it's what you've been put into. You accept the reality you're given. You're a kid. You don't really have a choice anyways. But as soon as I graduated, left to university, I found myself at 19 years old for the first time walking into a metaphysical shop. And I had always been taught that these places were evil and demonic and satanic, and that I was going to get a demon and whatever, fear, right?
Yep.
And I walked in, I didn't even know it was a metaphysical shop. I walked in because I smelled some incense on the street, and I was like, that smells amazing. I'm going in the shop. Walked in randomly one day. I'm a freshman in college. I'm studying chemical engineering, which is a whole branch of my story, but I go in the shop and before I see what it is, I feel the energy and it feels like home. It feels like correct.
Mm.
It feels like a warm blanket when you're freezing. And it was my own personal experience in that was so contradictory to everything I had been taught in the past. And I drank the Kool-Aid because I wanted to be a good person, because I was spiritually interested, right? I wanted to be and emotionally easily manipulated, right?
Mhm.
As empaths are. I wanted to be a good person. I wanted to know God. I wanted to like serve love. And that's how they told you could. And I was like, great, sounds good. I'm a Virgo, I'm gonna follow the rules.
Yeah.
Like, I'll do it. Like, I drank the Kool-Aid. Like, I was a born again Christian. And no hate, you know, to people who find their spirituality and their meaning through that. Like, religion is a beautiful thing, to an extent.
Mhm.
Dogma and fear mongering is where it kind of gets into that like chaos energy. But I bought a book that was 10 years ago now. So I started with Feng Shui. It was the Feng Shui and sound healing were the first modalities I ever got into. To this day, I mean, I am a student. I am a student, a teacher, a peer. I've studied and apprenticed in and certified in everything, all the ways that you can learn something in probably like 10 different modalities. I could sit here and listen to you, but like I'm all of that together. The sum of that is that I fancy myself an occult philosopher. I would call myself a witch, but more so a shaman and a medicine woman. I have a vow of benevolence, um, and which means that I'm to serve order, love, and harmony in my workings and daily life. Um, I've seen some shit, of course. Of course, I've seen exorcisms. I've seen obviously ghosts. I see and read beings all the time. Like, I very much live in both worlds at the same time, both like the mundane and the energetic or spiritual and overlapping realms. So yeah, I think in the past I really struggled coming into this line of work. After quitting a chemical engineering career, which I'm a firstborn daughter of immigrant parents, so that was really fun to do.
Mm.
That was really fun to experience. For oldest of five. Like, what do you mean you're quitting?
Yeah,
We
you got
don't.
the
Why
job, you got the
Mhm.
education, you did the thing, like you're in the pinnacle of the dream. Like what, you know? Yeah. Ugh.
I was 23 years old out of university, making good money. I had a good relationship. I had a great apartment, a great house. I had some friends. Like, I had the career, the job. It was in the defense contracting industry, by the way.
Interesting.
So war. Um, and I wanted to die.
Yeah.
I was so miserable and I couldn't figure out why, because everyone around me was like content.
Mm.
I'm 23 years old. I'm this like young, attractive, intelligent, building wealth, like woman, young woman. And I wanted to lay down and not wake.
Mm.
And by the grace of the creator, I ended up getting very sick in 2018. And I would quit my job by March 2019, and I would be sick for a year and a half with ongoing mononucleosis. Mono. So usually people have mono for a month. I had it for 18 months. It's I would sleep 14 to 16 hours a day. I had no energy. I literally could not do my job. I couldn't show up. I like physically could not show up to work anymore, and I had to quit. And then I went to
Wow.
this like dark night of the soul, and like the guy I was with left me. He moved to California from Florida, where I was living at the time, and I was just so lost. But I knew that I loved crystals. I knew that meditating really helped me manage my copious amounts of anxiety.
Mhm.
I used to have panic attacks like constantly, like every other day. I haven't had a panic attack in a very long time now. That's a whole topic.
Mhm.
Nervous system regulation, energetic hygiene,
Yes.
right?
My favorite topics.
Um,
Yes.
I'm writing a little freebie ebook right now on those for awakening empaths,
Oh, I
or
love
for
that.
the so that'll be out soon. But through persistence and truly, I believe that when it comes to your calling, especially as a healer, you can run, but you can't hide.
Ain't that the truth?
And I mean, the level of sick that I was, like my half my hair fell out. I was bald. I have pictures, but like, it's completely back now. But I was just so on a cellular level, like sick. And this is like very common in shamanic initiations. Um, for And yes, I also facilitate plant medicine. That's always a big question. Like, oh, you're a shaman. Uh, yes. My partner is also, he's a Peruvian medicine man. So we're kind of like, that's like the biggest foundation of our relationship is our mission and purpose together.
Mm.
So I think that's the biggest summary. I mean, I can talk about what the past 5 years since I quit on this full-time healer, full-time entrepreneur journey has looked like. I can talk about that for sure. There has never been a dull month. every year I look back at the year before and go, oh my God, so much has changed.
Mm-hmm.
This time last year I was living in Mexico. Now I'm outside of Detroit. And the year before that I was living in Colorado. And the year before that, 2 years before that, I was living in Florida. So it has been a wild, wild ride, but I would do it all again. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It has been the biggest test of courage and spiritual stamina. But the amount of wisdom that I've been able to amass and be blessed with is something that every day I wake up and try to give back to the world as an offering, and as part of my dharma and my purpose. So
I love that.
yeah, that's my very brief summary of like, how did you get here?
Yeah, which
I
I know is
now
can be so hard to sum that up because I know it can be quite a complex and robust, and like every little moment really contributes in some way. So I understand that sometimes it can be hard to answer that question, to kind of like bring it in something that feels like it honors it, but also
when
is sums it up.
I quit March 2019. By January 2020, I had this holistic health blog, BlissfulxBohemian.com, and I was pushing it, pushing it, pushing it. And I didn't want to talk about spirituality because I was afraid to come out of the broom closet, as we call it.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment I did, I went viral on TikTok. And the pandemic started and I popped off. And the timing of it is kind of crazy, but it was like the moment I relented to share what I always deep down needed to share, the floodgates opened for me.
Mm. I think that that just like speaks to like the power of acknowledging what feels authentic to our soul. And so the way that energy moves and responds to us when we're really acting from that place, it can be so powerful.
Mhm. It's been a wild, wild ride. I've thrown retreats before in like 2022. We have another one coming this year. I'm a multiple six-figure entrepreneur. I've had multiple six-figure revenue years before. This year, not last year now, 2023, I worked a business merger. Now we are Ancient Soul Gardens LLC with another shaman and a yogini. Um, AncientSoulGardens.com, shameless plug, but
Yes.
or at Ancient Soul Gardens on any platform. Now I'm at this point in my life, and having gone through my Saturn return last year and being now a year with this medicine man, I'm at this point in my journey where the sky is the limit. There's nothing that I have to do. Everything is because I get to. And I mean that like on all levels. I do feel though I do have to serve, or that's the contract that I have, right? The blessings that I have are because of the offerings that I give. And I'm happy to do that. But I'm just I'm at this like the top of the roller coaster again of what do I want to build? How big do I want to take this? How much of an impact do I want to make? Um, Whereas like I could also literally do nothing.
Mm.
So, the past 6 months has me been changing the fuel in my tank from fear and necessity to service and love. And that has been really interesting and a lot of ego deaths and things like this. But my brain is too hungry, and that's like,
I wonder if that's a Virgo thing because I'm the same way. I had literally have studied already in what could be seen as like a relatively short time, at least in this lifetime, like really being into spirituality, like full list of different modalities I've studied, trainings, all this kind of stuff. And I have a whole nother list of things of like, I know I'm going to get to this. I know I'm going to like learn about this and do more in this and do stuff in this. And I just cannot get enough. My brain loves to understand and learn from all of the different places that have wisdom for us, you know? And I just want to say too, one, thank you for sharing about your story. And what I hear as an element of it is something that I know a lot of people are really going to resonate with, of, you know, having experiences earlier in life that sort of make you question yourself and if something's like wrong with you or if something's bad with you, which naturally then drives us into let me mold myself to what would be correct, right? And
Mhm.
having to ride that wave, having to go through that cycle until we realize that that like drains the life out of us, you know? And then we have to come back around to,
Literally.
okay, yeah, like very much literally. And like and like that journey of coming back around to, wait a minute, maybe there was nothing wrong with me. Maybe I was so fucking special people didn't even know what to do with me, you know? Like maybe what made me feel different is actually my like sacred offering for this world, right? And maybe, and me coming and feeling the beauty and the appreciation and the power in those things is something that I can then offer other people who are also trying to reckon with the ways that our society has done a number on all of these different elements of our experience and our identity that are actually very special and have been honored in generations and cultures before this, and like coming back into that place. And I think that that's not only very moving, even though I'm sure it was, and then I can hear even from the bits that you shared, quite difficult, but I think that it's beautiful, how our stories in some ways just like perfectly prepare us for the kind of impact that the world needs. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yes.
Absolutely.
Suffering is great. Suffering is great.
Teaches us quite a lot, that's for sure. Okay, cool. So let's take a break so that we can come back and talk about what we're both so excited to dig into about science and spirituality and how our neurospicy experience is really integrated into that all. So we'll be right back. Okay, so for the part of this conversation that I just can't wait to see what goes on from here, one of the things we were just talking about on our little break was about the fear of coming out of the broom closet, so to speak, which I very highly relate to. Some of parts of your story, I literally was thinking to myself, like, I think I've said these exact same words. I feel so much the same as you, especially with the way that religious experiences sort of conditioned me to think about certain modalities or certain approaches or certain ideologies. And then when I found myself really resonating and feeling the truth and the peace and the beauty and the love in those, that being like something that was really conflicting. So when the time came where I was like, no, wait, this is like really what I mess with. Like, this is really what speaks to me. Like, this is something that feels like it's aligned with my soul. It was very challenging to claim that publicly. And you had said
Mhm.
that people had really valued you for your science background. And while
Mhm.
I wasn't necessarily in like a science career before it, I think people that would have known me, like even growing up, like very studious, very practical, like really, you know, smart, whatever that means. And so there was also a part of me too that I was like, gosh, like people are going to think I'm a kook. You know, like they're going to think I'm crazy, you know, like, and there being like a fear of that because somehow in our society we have positioned spirituality and science and a scientific approach like on opposite ends of a spectrum, which on one level I get, but on the other level that just feels so baffling to me. So I would love to like sort of start this conversation with your thoughts about that.
Yeah. So they are on opposite sides of a spectrum, but they're not the antithesis of each other.
Mhm.
Opposites have a lot in common,
Yep.
right? You know that Virgo, Sun, Pisces, Moon,
Yep. Astrology teaches us
right?
that beautifully.
And that's also like the law of duality. Opposites are extremes of the same thing,
Mhm.
but they are the same thing. And that is like way for in terms of spirituality and science or the scientific method, it's our systems of understanding things, right? One is more rigid and tangible, more masculine, and one is more intangible and about feeling and subjective, and that's like our more spirituality. I do believe in spiritual science, and like everything. This is how I like to look at it. Science is a measured understanding of spiritual phenomena. So we get to have both. We get to have both. They used to live together, right? Numerology and mathematics used to live together. Astronomy and astrology used to live together. Physics and metaphysics used to live together until we divorced them, right? Until we decided that the intangible was not as valuable as the tangible. And that's really interesting to think about, because I was just mentioning the words like masculine, feminine being the intangible, the subjective, masculine being the tangible and the objective. Our society hates the feminine, hates the intangible, hates the passive, because it cannot be put in a box. And if you cannot put it in a box, you cannot put a price tag on it.
Yep.
And that's why I believe that spirituality has been divorced from science, because the feminine has been cast out of society. It is not only is it not valuable, it is the antithesis of value.
Will you tell me more about that? I love that it's the antithesis of value. Oof.
That's how which is the opposite of the actual truth, right?
Yeah.
Like rest is not valued in our society, for example. We're very disconnected from the plant world. We're very disconnected from the sacred cycles. Both of those are very feminine realms. If it is not tangible, if it cannot be quantified, which is what the yin or the feminine is, you can't commodify it. And
can't
so
monetize it.
Right. Art. You cannot, I mean, you can attempt to, and people do. It's very subjective, right? But you cannot put a value on art because it's intangible. Feeling, maybe we can measure like the nervous system reaction or the chemical reaction in the body, but feeling, emotion is more intangible. Meaning, understanding, it's more intangible. So
yeah, I was just going to say, I love how you drew the connections between those and how they are connected to masculine and feminine energetic types. I see that reflected in many different places. I am so with you on how we prioritize yin and masculine energy and really deprioritize yin energy and rest and all that kind of stuff. And what I find too, I wonder if this resonates for you, is I feel like it's harder to quote unquote know things about the feminine. Of course, it's talking about like what's tangible and how we can quantify things. And I feel like, especially in like the patriarchal kind of society that we're in, there's this extreme discomfort and fear for what is unknown, right? Like what cannot be, like
which
I
is
can't
the
wrap my
feminine.
Yes, which is the feminine. So it makes total sense to me. I just did a podcast with somebody talking about the importance of pleasure and how pleasure has been demonized, and pleasure being, something that's like our most embodied form of our spirituality and something that is deeply connected to the feminine archetype, and things like are some of the most magic in the world, like fertility and all these things that happen from those places. And I feel like it creates a lot of fear to not completely be able to mentally understand what all of that's about, which in part has manifested into a culture where we really like to quote unquote know with our mind certain things, and somehow that's more comfortable. Somehow we tell ourselves a story that's more safe, but that's not like really true, right? And I think it's so interesting to be able to have that kind of awareness of ourselves, right? That our ego mind is always going to try and move towards something that creates an illusion of safety, but that's not necessarily like the full truth of it,
It's not. Look at our society. Who's happy?
100%.
The weirdos like who live in the outskirts. That's who's happy.
And I think that it's just so wonderful that the background that you have, where you went the full science route, you know, like you studied in it, you worked in it in chemical engineering in one of these fields that's kind of held, yeah, that like was kind of held on a pedestal for being so intellectual and like all of this kind of stuff, you know, and that you have still come to the truth and like the deep conviction that like all of this metaphysical spiritual stuff, that there's something to it, and that that doesn't have to create a dissonance in us to understand both elements of that, you know?
Yes, yes. My man is like this also. He's got a pharmacology doctorate. He's a PharmD.
Mm.
And he was there for a year and he was like, nope, 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 nope. And now he deals in natural medicines, cannabis, like this.
Mm. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's oh, but we really can have both. You know, we need both.
Yeah.
We live in a dualistic realm. We need both. We need both sides of both polarities.
Hmm. Yeah.
So we were going to talk about neurodivergence and looking at from science and spirituality. And I just wanted to first even qualify both of those.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you were
People
reading
people
my mind.
treat people treat science like a deity.
Yes, they do. You're so right. They
It's kind
literally
of
idolize
gross.
it. Yes.
Mhm.
Hmm.
It's just a method of measuring and understanding something by placing parameters and seeing if it tests over time through different uh, parameters, different
Iterations, yeah.
variables.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just a method. Science is not a being that we can bow down to, right?
Yeah.
I love science. I love science. That's why I study the occult, because it's where science and spirituality meet.
Hmm.
Um, like I was saying at the beginning, I fancy myself an occult philosopher, and you really need to have both of those hand in hand to look at things from both the lenses.
Mm.
So
With that lens and your own experience living in a world with a more like neurodiverse perspective, and like how you've come to understand both yourself and your own experience, as well as to be able to sort of look at it objectively and, you know, with that kind of science lens, I wonder how has both of these lenses giving you the opportunity to understand what that is in different and also deeper ways.
like I mentioned previously, I believe that our neurodivergent people are the medicine people. They used to be the medicine people, right? Like you wanted your medicine person to be kind of kooky, right? You wanted them to be a little bit all over the place. The witch doctor, the shaman, however you want to call them, right? In my tribe, we call it the behike, to be eccentric and to see multiple realms at the same time. So we are different because we're meant to bring different things. And we're focused on a bigger picture because we have to be the ones to remember the bigger picture, if that makes sense. Our sensitivities, we tend to have sensory sensitivities, right? That's like one of the defining things of being neurospicy is having sensory issues or sensory sensitivities, any of the five senses. That extra sensitivity, those extra neurons that are connected in the brain that lead to that extra sensitivity is what makes our intaking information extra articulate, and the way that our brain is more holistically connected in the way it's wired is our intuitive ability. So intuitive ability is the ability to naturally derive meaning from things without trying, like just unconsciously deriving meaning from things. So like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. A lot of people are looking at the sum and the parts. An intuitively gifted person naturally sees the whole. If that makes sense. And I
Totally.
really believe that that's in the neurospicy brain is due to, again, more connectedness. our brain is like hyper firing, right? ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. It's not talking about your kids bumping, jumping upside down hyper. It's talking about hyperactive brain activity disorder. The neurons are just firing, 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 firing. And so you have a lot more electrical voltage channel, like current going through the brain and more different parts of the brain all the time. And that makes the sensitivity. But the sensitivity, am I making sense here? The
Yes.
sensitivity is what's able to pick up on those extra things that clue into more than what meets the eye.
100%. I've always said that like people who are quote unquote sensitive, you're picking up more information than the average person, right? Or you're noticing more information than the average person. So it's almost like the volume dial is turned up and you have more channels, right? Like if you have a radio, right? Most people are listening to one radio and the volume's at like a 5, right? And when you're quote unquote sensitive, you have multiple radios and the volume's turned up to like an 11. So you're just picking up more information, which I think can be really beautiful because you're noticing details, you're feeling details, like you're sensing, interpreting, absorbing detailed information that other people just aren't, like they're not understanding the nuance of, right? The nuance of a sense of smell, or the nuance in a sound, or the nuance in how a fabric feels on your skin, right? Like you're taking in so much more information. And I think how you described too about the way that that information connects and is shared across the brain, across neurons, is different. Like there's more of it happening. There are more connections. So the ability for your brain to be able to say, oh, this and this and this means this, boop, blah, like plopped out of the equation, at like
Easy.
a really increased rate, and to be able to come to different conclusions than people come to because your formula is working with more information to start with. You know what I mean?
And it's a more advanced formula, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always say too, I have some loved ones who identify with this and have struggled with it. I'm like, it's almost like your brain has a totally different computer system that it can run on. And how fucking cool is that? Like everybody in this world has got us, they've been conditioned, whatever, to like have a certain system, you know? And so information run throughs it this way, this way. It has a certain, flow that it goes here. Has certain capacities here. And you've got a whole other system in your brain, which means it has different capacities. Information can flow through different ways. It can come to different conclusions. It can take totally different routes to get to a point that other people will never see because their brain doesn't have that kind of system. Like it's literally offering a diversity of experience and a diversity of information to the world that none of us would have ever had the opportunity to see. Like that's fucking rad, you know?
Yeah, but it also is not very conducive to falling in line. And so our people have been shoved out, quacks, eccentric, crazy,
Yeah.
when we're here to remember the grand scheme of humanity. Seeing that bigger picture is something that never turns off for us. Neurodivergent people tend to have an incredible sense of justice, right? And actually, contrary to popular belief, empathy, hyper empathy, even.
Yeah.
Where we start having empaths, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I believe like the clair abilities, the psychic abilities, clairsentience, cognizance, voyance, all the clairs that what those are describing is the extra sensitivity leading to extra information. As I also mentioned earlier, it's my personal and business mission, Ancient Soul Garden's mission, to help those neurospicy, empathic, baby healer, awakening healer people reclaim their power and then their space. Because even though we're shoved out, we're still very needed.
Absolutely.
I believe everybody should and does have their own spiritual information, their own intuition, their own power, their own sovereignty. But it doesn't hurt to have a priest, someone who has specialty in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like it doesn't hurt to have a professional cook make your dinner.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to have, it's very, very useful to have someone who's intuitively or spiritually gifted around and for guidance when you're going through something, when you're at a crossroads.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I deal completely in crossroads as a shaman. Birth, marriage, death, big life events.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I'm needed. Whenever someone comes to me, I'm like, what happened? It's never for nothing. It's always, oh, my husband left me. Oh, I quit my job. Right?
Yeah.
Big life events. Oh, my mom passed away, right?
Yeah.
We can look at neurospiciness and the different facets of it through the scientific phenomena and then through the energetic or intuitive or spiritual phenomena as well. But intuitively, looking at the bigger picture, of course, is that our people, I'm saying again, the healers, the medicine people, the neurospicy people, who I believe to be the same, one and the same, just scientific and spiritual lens difference. We believe that we're broken, too sensitive, too much.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we just fit in?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we just be happy with our life? And it's because we're meant to change things. We are diverse to bring diversity.
Mm-hmm. It just like really hits me in a place in my heart because, I observe that we place such an emphasis on conformity. Don't even get me started on like white supremacy roots and all of that and resistance to diversity and like the like really strong um like enforcement on current systems versus us being able to have that process of questioning like, is this working the way that we want it to? Is this having the impact the way that we want it to? Is there another way we could do this and still get what we want out of it and actually get other benefits to every kind of structure and process that we have, both in our society and the ones that we apply personally, right? Like there's, at least in this Western culture, and I do think that that's reflected to a certain extent globally as well. Like there is quite a resistance and a sort of like a demonizing of the other, of the unknown. Again, that fear of it, bringing it back to what we talked about in the beginning. And so I totally, it feels so true to me what you're saying, that the souls that have come through with this, innate ability to pick up more and to see more, and for it to make perfect sense to them that if we're moving through this world in a way that follows our instincts of love, that we would change things, right? That we would challenge some things, that we would evolve, right? That those people would have a really hard time in this culture right now because a lot of people just don't know how to receive that. They don't know how to make space for that. And then there's also not a lot of people teaching those how to embrace the magic that they're here to bring, like, of course, you're doing. So that's why I'm so happy we're having this conversation, because I think it's important for people to hear that not only is there nothing wrong with you, but there's something really important that you're here to do in this earth. Like there's so much value that you have, and the places where
And we
you
need you.
feel, yes, we do. And the places where you feel friction and judgment is not a reflection of anything being wrong with you. It's just a reflection of where our current society is and its ability to respond to some of those things. Um, so I'd love your thoughts on that. And also for, you to share a little bit what that can look like for people. Maybe that was what was your journey was like, or maybe what you recommend to other people in terms of a process of starting to claim, their experience, and what that looks like to start carving out your own space and really taking back your own power and being able to move through the world claiming and embodying the authenticity of your essence and your experience? Like how can people start to do that if they do identify with this experience that we've been talking about?
Yeah. So first, I would start with learning the terminology as best you can. Scour Google, scour Pinterest, maybe scour Instagram or TikTok. Those a little bit less though. Find what you can. Find even a mystery school. Ancient Soul Gardens, it's a mystery school. Goes from like all the way from I just found out I'm an empath to I'm a master practitioner. So there are other schools though. There are schools, there's many indigenous prophecies that talk about these schools popping up around this time of great change. There's a lot of prophecies about the time of great change that we're in right now. I think we can all feel it. I think the pandemic was the kickoff event. And especially because of how many spiritual awakenings it sparked. And, there's so much beauty to that within the pain of what's happened. Find a school. They say like when the student is ready, the teacher appears, but do what you can to study the terminology of what things mean. What does clairsentience mean? What does an empath mean? I don't love this term, but what does a star seed mean? What is somatic healing? What is the vagus nerve? What is a chakra? What is the aura? And how do they work? Start with basic knowledge of what you are and then how to care for it. Start with your energetic hygiene. Start with your nervous system regulation. Start with your subconscious reprogramming. You can spend 10 years on just those.
Yes, you could.
And the masters are always going back to the basics,
100%.
which is what I just mentioned continually. It's a foundation for a reason. And then after that, keep following your curiosity. Nothing that you're drawn to is an accident. It is all completely on purpose. It is all guiding you to your purpose, to your dharma, your highest service that you can be of. And I know, and from experience and all the apprentices and students and clients that I've had over the years, when you're in your dharma is when you receive your most blessing, you feel the most in harmony with yourself and the world and the universe. So that we also use the word vocation for dharma or ikigai. Ever heard of ikigai?
I haven't.
It's a Japanese one. It's like that sweet spot where you're doing something that's of service, you're good at it, you like it, and you can be paid for it. That you can receive from it as well. That is like that sweet spot. So like you're already a weirdo. Don't be afraid to be weird, okay? Just, go with it. Go with it. Go with what you're good at. You don't have to change. And changing is a disservice to yourself first and foremost, and then to the collective, because you won't be able to. Who's going to be you if you're not going to be you, right?
100%.
Who's going to be that person? So find the modality, the teacher, the community. You can start with Ancient Soul Gardens if you like. There are likely more in-person brick and mortar spaces depending where you live. There are in every city I know of, and many online, and many who are both online and brick and mortar, mystery schools. So find, if you don't know, like if you're having a hard time finding them, like when's the last time that you prayed or that you sang or that you danced? Prayer comes in many forms, right? And asked, when was the last time you asked your angels, your guides, your power animals, whatever it is, your allies? When was the last time that you asked them for something? When was the last time you gave them an offering, right? So you can give an offering. Offerings can be done in many, many forms. It can be even with yourself. An offering I like to give to my ancestors is like a hot, restful bath for myself, where I can be with them, and just like honor the rest they never got to have through the rest that I can have and that they gave me. give your offerings and then ask for help. It can be, an offering can also be like bread that you're not going to eat under a tree for nature to have, for the animals to have. It can be something more obvious, like $10 to someone on the street, right? There's so many different forms of offering. They don't have to be tangible. It can be a song that you sing that your grandmother loved to remember her, right? Give your offering and then ask, show me my path, show me my path. But I will tell you, you have to be down. Right?
Yes.
You know.
Get ready, saddle up.
I will tell you, if you ask for things to change, they're going to change.
Woof, that's one prayer I'm like, man, I got to be careful when I use that one because when it happens, it happens.
If you're wanting to find your path and you feel you're a bit lost and you're wanting to find that, like I said, the teacher, the community, the school, give your offering, ask, and you shall receive. But just know that it may look nothing like what you thought it was going to look like, but it will be correct for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
100%.
that's where I would start.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that mirrors a lot of what I've talked about even in previous episodes. I say follow your curiosity 100%. I think it's your intuition. It's your like little internal compass. Like here's the next step. Here's the next step. You only need to know one step at a time. It's your ego mind that gets you
Mhm.
preoccupied with needing to know more than that because it wants you to be safe, which is great. Thanks, ego, so much for trying to keep us safe. But like, no, we only need one step at a time, And your intuition wants to help lead you there. Be specific about what it is that you want, what's most important to you in this moment, and then be open and mindful about all of the places that that shows up for you. I think that that's so powerful. I'm feeling called
Mhm.
to ask you um, for your take on this. So I love my fellow, spiritual channelers and healers that are so um that feel so passionately about an embodied spiritual experience, which really is that nervous system regulation, that somatic work, right? That's really where all the juicy stuff is. I wonder
Mhm.
what your thoughts are about somebody who maybe does identify as neurodiverse or very have a very strong sensory awareness and the experience of trying to find nervous system regulation and finding safety in your body with such a high sensory input, right? Because it kind of logic would tell us that it's maybe even a little bit more difficult for those of us who are like feeling everything at volume 100 to be able to find that inner calm and that inner stillness, which is kind of the oxymoron, but also the magic of it all. So I would love for you to speak to a little bit about your perspective on what that might be like for us to really find that sense of safety. So really we can deepen into the senses is my experience, but initially to like let our body know that we're okay.
Mhm. Well, let me first validate it is more difficult for us to ground. Um, I have anybody who starts any of our programs where they're like, okay, I want to be a healing practitioner. We start with like, I call it like wax on, wax off, where they want to get into channeling, they want to get into reading auras, they want to astral project, they want to go to the Akashic records, like all the glitzy glimmy stuff. Like, sorry, actually, we're going to start with grounding.
Yep.
You're going to wax on, wax off, and you're going to hate it for a minute, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's because that is the key closing point. Learning how to ground as an empath, as a sensitive person, as a neurodivergent, is that you close the gap of all of this very heady in our head, feeling like we're a floating head out of our body, all of this spiritual gifting, strong third eye, strong crown. When we learned how to ground and we grow the strength of our lower chakras, all of this lightning finally has a way to come down and through into this physical reality.
Yep.
So almost every student that I get in that's like, I'm intuitive gifted, I don't know what to do. I have actually an academy called Intuitive Academy within Ancient Soul Gardens. And we start with grounding because almost every student in Intuitive Academy comes in with, like I said, this really strong upper chakra, very spiritually strong, and then their lower chakras are just like on doo-doo. Like, their lower chakras are just like
Yeah.
either they're usually just completely like off,
Yeah.
or as off as they can be, just very weak, right? Weak root, center of safety, weak sacral, center of pleasure, creativity, creation, weak solar plexus, center of power and sovereignty and inner strength and physical strength. It's the core, right? Tend to have a very strong heart, which is where the chakras converge. I also see sometimes it depends, either a hyperactive throat or a very underactive throat.
Mhm.
But almost always those three, the solar plexus, sacral, and root, are just like non-existent.
Yeah.
So that's why we start with this grounding, because again, we have so much giftedness up here. These chakras are just on fleek, but it has no way to come through and ground.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? And
Yes.
so if you want to, like I mentioned previously with the subconscious rewiring, the nervous system regulation, that is where you want to start. And your energetic hygiene, which is the practices of calming the nervous system, regulating the nervous system, is a part of energetic hygiene.
Mhm.
If you're like, I'm trying to find safety in my body, I'm easily tipped off, I easily go into fight or flight, I get triggered all the time, like I don't feel safe ever. Trust me, I have been there for many, many years. Start with learning about the vagus nerve. Start with learning how to ground. Grounding is when you are in your body and in the present moment. That is when you are grounded. You are here. You're anchored in.
Mhm.
Which, if it's very painful for this type of person to be in the body because it is so intense. And so we uproot.
I was
We're
just
up
going to
here.
say, yeah, because like being grounded is also being in your senses. And when your senses are so intense and you've never
Mhm.
learned how to let them move, which
Mhm.
is also this process of letting it come all the way down. I have the image of the toroidal field, and basically it's kind
Love
of like
to.
finishing a cycle, right? Like my experience was that I was so tired all the time, which had a lot to do with many things, but how it shows itself to me visually now is that I had all this energy in my upper chakras that was like sitting on my shoulders and was
Mhm.
exhausting me to try and carry all of this really intense energy that was trying to come through me all the time. Got this big aura, and like all this kind of stuff. And I wasn't letting it move all the way through, like a river
Right.
water that needs to keep flowing down, or else it's going to keep building, building, building. And all of a sudden you have this dam, like a dam worth of water, and grounding is that process of opening the dam so things can flow through. And not only does all the stuff you've been carrying finally release, and is there a catharsis and a healing in that, but then there's room for more things to come in. Like that's how more the channeling,
Mhm.
the purpose, the creativity, whatever it is that you feel curious about, you feel like your inclination is, like that's what creates space for it to continue to come through your channel, is when your channel is fully going from the in to the out you know and yeah, it makes total sense that those of us who are very sensitive and have these kinds of experiences would literally like a knee-jerk reaction, like "Ugh," like go away from a grounding, from a being in our body and being in our senses, because we've just not
Mhm.
yet learned how to allow all of that to let that to be safe, and to let that not mean something about our level of worth or our level of safety. So I love that that's where you guys start in your academy, and that you really
Stop trying
stress
to
the
open your
importance of
third
that.
eye.
What
I
was
love
that?
everything you just said. Stop trying to open your damn third eye. It's already open. I need you to live in reality, babes.
She's
I
popping
need you
off.
to
She
live
said,
in
stop
reality,
fixating on the third eye, people. Focus on your crown
please.
chakra. Focus on your sacral chakra. Focus on your solar plexus, please. Oh my
Mhm.
God, that's so
So,
funny.
so what, just in case you're like, okay, fine, I will ground, even though it's boring. Trust me, once you do it, it's not boring because all of this giftedness and this power can finally materialize, can finally manifest. So I think of grounding in terms of the four elements and the five senses.
Mhm.
So whatever, experiment, whatever's going to work with you. If you notice, I've been burning herb this entire time, because the smell of it keeps me in my senses. It keeps me anchored in this moment.
Mhm.
So air being smoke, or sticking your head out the car window when your friend's driving, or enjoying a gush of breeze that comes, water, taking a hot bath, swimming in a natural body of water. These things, they force you to be in your body, to be in your senses. Could be going out in the rain, right?
Mhm.
Could be like a water spray that smells nice. Uh, Fire, also with me, I have a candle going. Uh, my favorite way to ground is sunbathing. You want to be in your body, you want to be in your senses when it is pleasant.
Yep.
So you said you were talking about pleasure on a previous podcast. Grounding is easier or much more easily done when you want to be in the present moment in your body and your senses.
Mhm.
Sunbathing feels great.
Yeah.
We're working with the element of fire here. And then earth, you literally electrically ground yourself when you put your feet on the earth.
Mhm. It's my favorite.
Feet on the earth. Look around at nature, feel some leaves, smell the flowers, you know? And then, yeah, in terms of the senses, we've kind of been touching already, pleasant smells, pleasant sights, pleasant music, pleasant or sounds, pleasant tastes. A hot bowl of soup can be very grounding for you. Um, and by the way, even though I've been uh, on this path for 10 years and full-time practicing for 5, I'm still grounding every day. It's just I don't realize it now, it's very integrated into my life.
Yeah.
I don't have to remember to do it, I just do it. But I'm grounding, like I said, all the time, all the time. So if you're to have your strength up here and not necessarily down here, you're
Mhm.
going to need to do this on a daily, even multiple daily basis.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
just your energetic hygiene.
Yeah. And I feel like that, and I love using the imagery of the roots of any plant, right? Like the amount of that you want your tree to reach up, you got to have the roots be down at least as deep, if not deeper, right? So I know in the times where I felt like more gifts kind of come online, or the volume of some gifts turn up, or the times where I was grounding the most, or I was kind of forced to ground more, because they have to go hand in hand. And I just want to say too that like kind of a popular topic is mindfulness, which I think is great. And I think one of the things our society is kind of more popularly wrapping our heads around is the thought of being mindful of our thoughts, but that's still being mindful of like very upper chakra kind of things, like our mental body, which is wonderful. We need that. That is a part of the equation. It is not the whole equation. Right. So being mindful of our body's feelings, of our soma, which is where a lot of that somatic work comes in, right? Being mindful of our senses, being mindful of the sensations in our body it's really as simple as that, to really start deepening into a grounding practice, which is so imperative for empaths. It's so imperative for sensitives. It's so imperative for those of us who are a little neurospicy to like have a really, really strong or consistent grounding practice, because at the end of the day, I really feel like that's honoring the sensitivities that we were born with, so that and when we really start honoring them, we really start claiming them, and then we can really start creating impacting some of that purpose that we're here to do with it, and that the earth and that our fellow humans desperately need from us too.
This has been amazing.
Yes. I want to thank you so much. Before we wrap up the podcast recording today, I would love for you to plug all of the stuff that you want to. Please tell people how they can be connected with you. Tell us about some of the offerings that you have coming out. I know that this audience absolutely identifies with being sensitive and coming into awakening or their intuition. So I know that they're going to absolutely love whatever it is that you're offering, knowing that that's your mission. So please share all of the things.
Thank you for the opportunity. So Ancient Soul Gardens is a full A to Z mystery school from awakening empath, even before then, even before they realized, all the way through to master teacher healer. So we have everything from beginning, we have everything from readings, receiving healings, to some Reiki baseline, basic Reiki shamanic trainings and certifications. And then even further than that, we have 2 different academies. One is more Western, meaning like the Americas and the Middle East. And one is more Eastern, more Dharmic, Ayurvedic, Sanatana Dharma traditions. Everything that we teach is rooted in ancient lineages, ancient knowledge. It's very old, but of course we have developed ways of understanding it and practicing it. And then beyond that, we have apprenticeship. We have currently 18 apprentices who are also those practitioners, giving the readings to the people who are pre-finding out that they're an empath. We also have a membership called The Portal. We have live class every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 Eastern. And there's a thriving, huge community, hundreds of people in there who are all empaths, who are all quote unquote people like us, healers, in many different backgrounds, modalities, walks of life, ethnicities, countries like this. And that is pretty much everything that we're offering right now. You can follow us at Ancient Soul Gardens. You can email us hello@ancientsoulgardens.com, or you can visit our website and take our sorting quiz, almost like Harry Potter sorting hat, at ancientsoulgardens.com.
I love that.
I didn't mention I'm a Slytherin.
Okay, I was literally just going to ask you. I was like, okay, we talked about, and you would be surprised. I have a very high percent. Well, maybe you wouldn't be surprised. I have a very high percentage of my guests who identify as the Slytherin house, and I love it so fucking much. I think it's badass. And just so everybody knows, I'm going to have the links to the things that Savannah just shared in the show description. So if you want to make it super easy to just click on over to these places and check out the offerings or just get connected, all of that is going to be in the show notes for you to make it easy peasy. Thank you again, Savannah, for coming on the podcast. I'm so grateful to have had that conversation with you and been able to pick your brain and to hear some of that wisdom come through you. And so that could both benefit me as well as everybody that's listening. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to exercise my throat chakra, because it is my weakest.
I feel like that's funny because we probably were the opposite. I definitely had an overactive throat, and I'm bringing it back into balance, not reaching into other people's, pulling in everybody else's cords into mine. So we achieved a great balance here. Thank you everybody for listening to this episode, and I will see you next week. Thank you for listening to this episode and for tuning in to Breakthroughs with Bree. Please share your favorite episodes with your friends and loved ones, and please like, subscribe, and rate the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it, as it helps me continue to create these episodes to help support your breakthroughs. I would love to stay connected with you, so please follow me on social media at Healing with Bree. Please check out my website at healingwithbree.net, which will always have the most up-to-date information about the services that I'm currently offering. And please consider using the link in the show descriptions to subscribe to my email list, so you can be the first to hear about any offerings and get all of the free resources that I offer, as well as get my weekly channeled messages. My deepest love and gratitude to you, and I can't wait to have more breakthroughs with you next week.